Before we get to our show, here is a podcast we think you're going to love.
I'm Elisa Lucas from Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits. I'd like to start a movement where we spend more time loving on our friends because although friends are important to us, they're often in the shadow of other relationships. So if you want to love on your friendships a little bit more, embrace friendship a little bit more, or just appreciate your friendships a little bit more, then this podcast is for you. We'll explore all the different ways friendships take place, share the amazing stories of friendship, and discuss best practices for the difficulties that friends may experience. It's time to embrace friendships because without our friends, who would we be? So check out Best Forevers on iTunes, Stitcher, and all the other podcasting listening venues. And be sure to follow Best Forevers Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Perhaps it's you, it's better than nothing.
We came up with our new
That's our new slogan. Hello, everyone.
For our podcast.
Perhaps it's you, it's better than nothing. Aren't you so intrigued? We're also an unofficial Unsolved Mysteries rewatch podcast.
Oh yeah, we're that too.
We watch Unsolved Mysteries and then we babble about it.
And people seem to like it.
I guess.
We can't explain it.
Yeah, that's another one of the mysteries. So I'm Liz.
I'm Samantha.
We're here in the great state of Minnesota to talk to you about some goddamn mysteries.
Yep, this is season 3, episode 20, and there's only like 2 or 3 episodes left in this.
How time flies
in this season? So we got to get ready for our season finale, and then we'll be starting season 4.
I can't believe it.
I know, it's speeding by.
How have we kept doing this for so long?
I don't know. There's a lot of unsolved mysteries associated with this podcast.
That's definitely one of them.
One of them.
Do you have any updates whatsoever?
No.
I don't at all.
Not really.
Do you have anything you want to just chat about or get off your chest? How excited are you for Game of Thrones? I see you're wearing a Winter is Coming sweatshirt.
I have been catching up on my Game of Thrones podcasts. I've listened to several while the season is going.
Which is your favorite?
There is a podcast that I think is just called the Game of Thrones podcast. They're really good.
Simple and to the point.
So the Game of Thrones podcast is a bald move podcast. I highly recommend it. If you're into pop culture, I feel like they have a plethora of podcasts that you would really enjoy. Also, they're super big Game of Thrones nerds, which I appreciate because there's this phenomenon in a lot of, shows and books and stuff. But in Game of Thrones, there's just so much, it's almost scholarship around the show and the books and theorizing, and it's been so many years, and George R.R. Martin weaves these complex tales that you can really go crazy with theories. And so I appreciate any podcasters that can bring in that knowledge. They do a really, really good job. I also like A Cast of Kings and Storm of Spoilers. Storm of Spoilers obviously includes spoilers. But what I like about them is that, again, they're very knowledgeable about the book theories and stuff like that, but they do half their podcast is non-spoiler and then half is spoiler. So in seasons past, there was one season where the entire season got leaked online. So half their spoiler part of their podcast was talking about that, but they also talk about theories and production leaks and things like that. I don't listen to the spoilery part until the season is over, and then I kind of have fun going back and listening to the second half of each episode. But yeah, so obviously I'm extremely excited about Game of Thrones. Travis and I are doing a rewatch. We're rewatching not the entire show, but some of our favorite episodes. Yeah. In preparation. I don't know what I'm gonna do when the show is over. We're probably never getting more books out of George R.R. Martin, so.
No, he doesn't seem to want to do that.
I think this is the ending we're gonna be stuck with, and I wasn't super thrilled with last season, so it's worrisome, but we'll see.
Who is your favorite character? Do you have one?
My favorite. Well, I named my dog Renly. Not that he's my favorite character, but I like Tyrion. He's a good character. He's better in the books. A favorite. It's really hard to pick a favorite.
It's like I'm asking you to pick your favorite child right now, and you're like, that's not right, Liz.
Yeah,
in fact, that's wrong.
I like Cersei in a way. I like the
I do too.
The villain women.
I not a huge Game of Thrones fan like you are, but I have watched all of Game of Thrones. Don't ask me a lot of questions because I have a lot of trouble with the family trees. But I feel like I'm watching it for basically the same reason I'm watching Drag Race, which is outfits and insults.
Oh, the outfits have gotten better each season for sure.
Cersei, yeah, she brings both of those things.
Yep.
I also really like Littlefinger.
Oh, yeah, he's good.
I realize that not everyone's into the accent, and I don't know. I don't know. I just do. I'm not going to defend that. It's just a fact.
I like him because he's got a complex storyline, right?
Yeah.
And so that makes him interesting. And similarly, Cersei, trying to like tease out their motivations and things like that.
Yeah, I never really know what he's going to do, but he's
interesting.
also very shady and bitchy, and that's exactly what I'm looking for in a character.
If anyone wants to talk Game of Thrones theories in our Facebook group, hit me up. I'm here for it all day long.
Samantha's always ready.
I have many favorite theories, especially going into this last season. It's kind of fun. This is why I listen to so many Game of Thrones podcasts, especially now, because now that the show has moved on from the books, there's so much theorizing that can be done, and it's really fun to like get with like-minded people who are like super nerds and like tease out these theories, and sometimes they come true, sometimes they don't. Some of them are like crackpot wild, and it's just fun. It's like this whole community, and I feel like I'm gonna miss that a lot. Like HBO is coming out with the spin-off shows and stuff, but it's just really fun. So it's gonna be a hole in my life I'll have to fill with something else. Maybe drugs, I don't know.
I was gonna say probably drugs. Or like drag racing.
Like
street racing.
Like street, okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep that one on the list, but it's not high up there.
Or
Chicken? I can show chickens.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Have you considered competitive chicken breeding and showing?
I hadn't until we watched the Chicken People documentary for Patreon. I'm still not really considering it, but despite what Sherry would have us think, I think they're kind of dirty animals.
Well, not if you bathe them all day.
Well,
every
yeah,
day.
if I spend 12 hours every day bathing them, they're really clean.
If you want to hear us talk more about chickens, you're going to want to be signed up for our Patreon, because that's the topic this month. Chicken People.
You can give us $1 a month, and you can listen to us talk about Chicken People. We also have like 14 other episodes, so you get instant access to that whole catalog.
It's a better deal every month.
Yeah.
Next month, actually, there we go. I stumbled upon an update. Next month, we decided what we're going to do. It's a Flat Earth
documentary
on Netflix.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet.
It's called Under the Dome, I think? No. That's a Stephen King novel.
That's a bad novel and show. I don't know.
Anyway, there's a Flat Earther documentary that I watched, but I can't remember the name of. And I thought it was going to be worse than it was. It was extremely good, and I'm going to make Liz watch it.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really fun. Also, maybe I'll decide the Earth is flat.
Maybe you will.
What's interesting about that is that my life would really change in no way. Like, what would I do different if the Earth was flat? Nothing.
I don't know.
Why devote time to that?
The reason to devote time to that is because there's no one out there that only believes the Earth is flat. If you believe the Earth is flat, you also believe the moon landing didn't happen. You also believe vaccines aren't effective. You know what I mean? Like, you also believe that fluoride is slowly poisoning you. Like,
well, it is.
You believe that everything is a conspiracy. The government is out to lie to us for reasons unknown.
True.
And that's what you devote your life to. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's people out there that just believe the Earth is flat and they believe in no other conspiracy.
Probably not, though.
But I don't think so.
Mac and I actually last night were talking about how some politicians are just clearly so detached from real life that their just behavior and mannerisms do seem super strange. And the one example was it was Mitt Romney's birthday, and his staff brought, did you watch this?
Yes.
His staff brings him his this big, beautiful birthday cake with birthday candles on it, and he clearly doesn't know what he's supposed to do.
It was made out of Twinkies.
Oh.
Because apparently he loves Twinkies.
But he takes each candle out one by one and blows them. Like, he's clearly confused by how to blow out birthday cake candles.
I saw some people online claiming that he was doing it so he wouldn't get like spittle all over his cake.
Yeah, but the thing
why
does he look like that then?
Okay, yes, there's that. There's also the issue with like everyone else in history has blown out their candles like that, and we still eat the cake.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be
unless it's like extra spitty.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. So like that, there's this story about when Ted Cruz first got married. His wife sent him to the grocery store, and he came home with 100 cans of soup and nothing else. He was like, okay, we won't have to make dinner. Here's all this soup. And she was like, no, go back. That's not how this works. And thinking about stories like that, I can see why people think there's lizard people.
But,
I don't know why lizards specifically, but I do get that you're like, that's not a human. A human doesn't say, oh, I need to go buy groceries for my new wife and my new home. I'll just buy 100 cans of soup. That is definitely an alien trying to be a human. That's somehow it's your 65th birthday and you don't know how to blow out the candles on a cake, even though haven't you done that 64 other times?
Maybe he's always done it that way.
And he's just like, I don't know how this works.
He's literally picking up 20 candles one by one and blowing them out.
When he was running, I remember him seeing this clip of him like going with his family to a park. It was supposed to be like, you know, this humanizing thing. It's like him and his grandchildren like going to this park. And he was like, yeah, it was nice. It was like this wide green space. And I was like, it's called a park, Mitt. It's called a park. But it was like he didn't know that. It was like he had never seen
space in the city where we grow grass and children can play.
And it's not like I have this problem on this podcast all the time where a word is like on the tip of my tongue and I can't think of it. It's not that. It's like he had never seen one before. Like he couldn't believe there was just free, public, open land that you're allowed to just go to. He was like, yeah, that was really nice. This green space. It's a park, Mitt. So
maybe he is a lizard person. If you peeled back his face skin, there would just be a green lizard underneath there.
Or some sort of alien.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not a human.
Yeah.
The Best Show used to have, which is a different podcast you should be listening to, but they used to have this joke that Mitt Romney recorded himself chewing and would listen to it. And the idea just being like, he's so incredibly weird that if you found that out, it wouldn't actually be like that strange. So I saw him like blowing out, and I was like, I kind of believe in those chew mixes now. I kind of believe he does record himself chewing and listen to it later.
If you told me that and didn't say that it was a joke, I would have believed it.
Exactly.
So your theory holds out.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, let's
season
talk
season
about
3.
It this episode.
It's episode 20.
You have the first one.
I like this one.
This one was alright.
So this is interesting. We're going to be talking about an old-time medium?
A diagnostician.
Whoa.
Isn't that what they called him in the show?
I don't know. Did they? Sure.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Okay. This is the story of Edgar Casey, but we get to that story by starting with a more contemporary story. Mm-hmm. We're learning about 27-year-old Casey Comra in 1986. She woke up one day and there was just like a spot in her vision that she couldn't see.
It seemed like an aura. If you get migraines like I do and you get an aura, that's what it looked like in the show.
Okay. They
like
just show this like
floating grayish
spot
in her vision that didn't go away and didn't result in a migraine.
Yeah. So she like wakes up one day, there's this like spot there and she's like, huh, that's weird. And then like by the end of the week it's like hasn't gone away and has gotten bigger. And she's like,
she almost couldn't see out of that eye.
Yeah. So she goes to the eye doctor. And I'm sure this is one of those things where you're like, okay, I'll go. They'll tell me it's not a big deal or I just have to do this. You know, let's go get it over with. Well, she goes and they tell her, you're going blind.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad news. And it was because she had optic neuritis, which is a severe inflammation of the optic nerve, and that she was apparently going to go blind. So there is no known cure for the disease, but they suggested steroids. And for some reason that's not specified, she didn't want to take steroids. Yep. Okay. All right. I mean, I kind of get that, but also if I was going to go blind,
yeah, I might take the steroids.
But it's all right. It all works out. So she found a doctor familiar with the mysterious methods of a man named Edgar Casey. who had become famous in the 1920s for diagnosing illnesses despite having no medical training while he was in a trance.
I think this is when Robert Stack called him a diagnostician, which is someone who's not a doctor but who diagnoses things, which maybe is a made-up word, but it's what he was doing.
The past is so incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So he made in his lifetime 9,000 diagnoses.
Diagnoses?
Murder. Diagnoses. Or readings.
He called them readings.
And he died in 1945, but many practitioners still follow his teaching, Samantha.
Yeah.
So some dismiss the cures as a lucky coincidence. Believe it or not, they're skeptical of medical advice that someone received while in a trance.
They described him as sleeping. He could only diagnose things while he was asleep. I think that was his his son that said that. Like, okay, that's not a doctor I'm going to.
But for those diagnosed with a disease that modern medicine could not cure, Edgar Cayce's methods continue to hold out hope. So now we're in like flashback mode. And Edgar Cayce, we learned of his mysterious ability when he was just 13 years old. He was not the greatest student, and he fell asleep on top of his spelling book. And what do you know? When his dad quizzed him, he knew everything. He knew the whole book, inside and out.
This is what you always wanted to
Oh my God, please.
When you were in school. Like, could I just fall asleep on this textbook and absorb the information? He could do it, allegedly.
What a better student I would have been if I could have just done that. And he even knew what page numbers different words were on, which isn't helpful, but is bizarre. So according to his son, Edgar Evans, it was the moment his father knew he was gifted. He says he had to do was sleep on his books at night, and he moved along very rapidly. Yes, by the way, of course. If you could just instantly memorize things, that would be very helpful. Whether it was spelling or math or history or whatever. And he became an exceptional student rather than an average student. Then we skim ahead to he's 23 and he suddenly loses his ability to talk.
It wasn't clear why, but...
Yeah, well, he just does. So, for an entire year, physicians are unable to explain or cure his illness. As a last resort, his parents convinced him to see a hypnotist, which, Mom, Dad, how come you've never been like, there's nothing we can do for this child? To the hypnotist! I'm a little bit sad now. Okay. This is also hilarious. His family physician attended and recorded the session in exact detail. Like, I'm calling out my doctor. Hey, doc. You know how I haven't been... Well, I can't talk, but whatever. Shush. Hey, doc. You know how
you're sending an email, even though the email doesn't exist.
Hey, I'm sending a raven, and the raven has tied to its foot. You know how you haven't been able to cure me for the past year, and you've been very unhelpful? Well, because of that, I'm getting hypnotized. How would you like to come by and record me being hypnotized? I'm sure you have nothing better to do. You're only a busy doctor. So then Cayce went into a deep sleep. When he awoke, everyone was shocked because it was the first time he spoke in a year.
He just sat up and said hello.
Yeah. He said, yes, we have the condition. It's a constriction of the throat, constriction of blood flow, so we will collect it. And then later the hypnotist told him to wake up. He sat up, he coughed up a little blood, and he could talk. I think that was probably his first reading, his son said. Thanks, son. So then his doctor persuaded him to attempt in diagnosing other patients.
Look, medicine was... it was different back then.
Made up quackery stuff.
Yes, you seem good at this. How about you try diagnosing?
Yeah. We have this person here that I is probably going to die. I don't know what's happening. How about you sleep on it? Let us know if you come up with anything. He agreed, but his son said the end result left him disillusioned. The problem developed when, at the end of some reasons, people would start asking him questions about what horse was going to win the race and what was going to happen in the stock market, results of the ball game. And when he found out what people were doing, he said, I'm giving it up. He did not want to use his powers for gambling and such.
No.
Only for diagnosing rare, hard-to-treat illnesses.
Well, and these people were like going to him pretending that they were sick, and then as soon as he was done, they were like, "So, one more question."
So about the horse in the 6th race.
Yeah, who are you feeling on that?
Are you feeling Spotty McBride or
Spotty McBride?
Old Deviled Egg? That's what horses are named, right?
Old Deviled Egg. Old Deviled Egg, Smotty McBride.
That's what horses are named, pretty much. I suppose you would know better than me.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Look for the next Triple Crown winner. Spotty McBride. Old Deviled Egg is looking good too.
I would never bet on a horse called Old Deviled Egg. That does not sound like a winner. I would assume that would only happen because you already had a horse named Deviled Egg. And for some reason you got an older horse that kind of looked like him. And then that horse would be Old Deviled Egg. Friends of mine live on a farm. And so they have a bunch of farm cats that are like, you know, sort of their cats, but sort of not their cats.
Yeah.
And they had this cat, very creatively named Yellow, that went on to be very prolific. So then the other cats ended up being called things like Fat Yellow and like something else Yellow. But then Yellow was referred to as Yellow himself because there was so many variations.
Yellow prodigy.
Yeah. So I could see one of those being like, oh, that's Old Yellow. That's
Young Yellow.
right.
New Yellow.
Fat Yellow, skinny Yellow. Yeah.
Could they just not come up with more creative names? Or?
There was just a lot of
There's
cats.
just so many.
Yeah. Oh no, it wasn't. It was Pig Yellow. That's what the biggest one was called.
Pig Yellow.
Yeah.
So imagine this is Win Place show and you're at the next horse race and it's Spotty McBride, Old Deviled Egg, and Pig Yellow.
Pig Yellow. The biggest one.
They're putting the wreath of roses on Pig Yellow.
Pig Yellow.
People are crying.
All right, well, don't ask me to name your racehorse. I think that's what we've just learned. Anyway, whoa. So Edgar Casey, about the tangent, yeah. Casey abandoned his psychic readings, married, and moved to Alabama, where he worked as a photographer. By 1914, he had 2 sons, Edgar, who we've already heard from, and Hugh. When Hugh was 8 years old, he was seriously injured in a darkroom explosion, and the local doctor was not very hopeful. He was like playing in the darkroom,
Lighting a match for some reason?
he dropped in a thing of chemicals, which obviously exploded and caused an injury to his eyes. So Edgar Casey, who has not attempted a reading in years, decides to try to save his own son. Can he do it? And
I appreciated the reenactment with the little boy whose head was literally just surrounded in bandages except for his mouth.
Like the Invisible Man. He's just like a mummy in bed. Help me, Papa. So Edgar did a reading and it called for putting like acid on his eyes, which the doctors were like, yeah, that's way too strong, but you know what?
He's gonna lose his eyes anyway.
This is hopeless, so fine, mutilate your son. And you know what?
It worked.
It worked. Dun dun dun, and it seemed like a miracle. Within 6 weeks, Hugh's sight was completely back to normal. Word of the boy's recovery spread, and soon Edgar Casey was famous. So he moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia in 1925, and he opened a center. And then for the next 20 years, received thousands of requests for readings. He was originally doing 2 a day, but he couldn't keep up with the demand, so he was doing up for like 9 or 10 a day, and that was too much for him, and he had a stroke.
Oh.
So, because he was on the brink of exhaustion. So, he died on January 3rd, 1945, leaving behind more than and 20,000 pages of readings. I'm getting this. The Unsolved Mysteries wiki for this episode is not very helpful, so this was from unsolved.com. And it said that the readings continue to serve as a wellspring of hope for those in search of cures that have eluded modern medicine. People like Kathy Kumara, who we were talking about at the beginning. When her optic neurosis was diagnosed in 1986, she went to this chiropractor who had studied his readings for 30 years. And this is what he said. Casey was very specific on what areas of the spine to adjust. The fact that Casey suggested this certain procedure for eye problems does not mean that he specifically diagnosed it as optic neurosis. He talked about vision problems, blindness. That's what I approach this as. And so what he is theorizing is that the reason Kathy is having trouble with her sight is that a nerve is being pinched in her neck. So he does a chiropractic adjustment, and within 7 days, Kathy's eyesight was fully restored. And Kathy believed that the treatment was responsible for her recovery. We hear from this skeptical professor who vehemently disagrees, and he thinks that it's the placebo effect, and then he explains to you what placebos are, in case somehow you didn't know that. And then Stack ends it by saying, "How can the unique life of Edgar Casey be explained? The medical world has refused to endorse his methods, yet at the same time is unwilling to dismiss them." And I was like, no, Stack, they're very willing to dismiss them.
Yeah, that seemed...
They're like full out dismissing them.
The medical professional they interviewed for the show fully dismissed it.
I mean, I'm glad this woman got her sight fixed, and that it turned out it was something that was like a pretty easy fix. That's good for her. I found this case very interesting just because it's weird. And it's not really like something else we've had before. It reminds me a little bit of the woman who could do those psychic drawings.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The thing that so I have a lot of questions. First of all, my one thing I noticed about this is they say he did over 9,000 readings, but they only showed 2 that were like successful in the show. He supposedly cured a little boy's eczema, and then this woman had this skin disease that went into remission after he gave her the reading. And I'm like...
Well, it's not a whole long thing about Edgar Casey.
I guess, but that was his most impressive cures?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was one of those things where I'm like, okay, if you're doing 9,000 readings, eventually one of them's going to be right. You know, it's like how Alex Jones predicted 9/11, because every day he's just predicting some catastrophic event. And then, so of course, eventually there's going to be a catastrophic event, and then he can claim he predicted 9/11. It almost felt like that to me. It's like, well, if you're doing readings twice a day, every day, up to 9,000, of course, some of them are going to be accurate. I don't know if that means that you're a psychic healer or, I don't know what he's, some sort of health clairvoyant. I don't know what he would be categorized as.
It's such a specific skill. What's interesting about it is, I feel like he must have believed it. Like, I don't know that he, like, is setting out to be a charlatan.
No, I think that's probably true.
So that's, like, an interesting level to it.
Have you looked up his, like, foundation or whatever? The company that still exists?
No, but I kind of want to go there.
So, it's complicated because they don't show you a lot unless you pay them. But they have a very complex website that talks about all kinds of things you can get done. It seems like they do meditation. They still do, I think you can become a practitioner of his method. For holistic health, treatments of illnesses, to dream interpretation and reincarnation.
Yeah, I looked briefly at his Wikipedia entry, and it did talk about how some people consider him one of the, like, pioneers of sort of new age thinking.
Sure.
That he wrote about auras, that he wrote about, like, certain dietary things that people hadn't really thought about before. He was interested in, like, dream analysis and stuff like that. Robert Stack also described him as an unpretentious man. We see, like, him fishing in Kentucky, and it's just a kind of interesting contrast.
Yeah.
I would like to learn more about it.
I would be interested. What I worry about is people who turn to things like medical clairvoyance instead of seeking actual medical advice.
Sure.
Because sometimes, and I'm not saying that this is one of those organizations, but a lot of things similar to this will sort of peddle cure-alls.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, here, take this, it'll cure your cancer. And then someone takes drinks basically water for 5 years and then dies of a treatable cancer. Like, those have been cases that have happened. And this kind of smelled like that, although I haven't looked into the foundation other than doing a cursory Google search.
I think that it kind of shows you how even today our medical system is so fucked that people are really desperate for solutions. And even just looking at the unsolved, like, this is the Unsolved Mysteries website about this case. People were writing things like, did Edgar Casey write anything about this? I'm in constant pain. Like, blah, 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 blah. Because they don't know who to turn to. And they're just, like, desperate for answers. So that does leave people very vulnerable to scams when they're not getting proper medical care and medical treatment.
One of my favorite podcasts is Oh No, Ross and Carrie, which is a Max Fun podcast that I maybe have mentioned in the show before, but not that long ago they did an episode or a series of episodes about people who drink urine. And one of the interesting and I think illuminating things that they uncovered was that a lot of people who are turning to this are doing so because they can't afford traditional, they can't afford to go to a doctor. And so, but they can afford this free ebook about drinking urine that claims that it's going to cure them of this debilitating affliction that they have. So
it's just sad because, like, in this case, right, when Edgar was working, there was just so much we didn't know, and that's why people were desperate for someone to come up with something in their sleep.
Right.
But at this point, there's plenty we know that people just don't have access to.
Yeah.
So in a way, like, for them, things haven't actually improved the way that you would think, because those,
if it's unavailable to you,
few are the only people getting the advantage, right?
Right. Yeah, if it's unavailable to you, it might as well not exist.
Yeah. How far we have come, and yet we're in the same fucking place.
Yeah. But I'm really happy for the woman in this segment that had her vision restored.
Yeah.
The thing of it is that they interviewed that doctor that, like, was skeptical about,
Sure, the placebo effect.
Right, but he never... What I was waiting for him to say was, like, explain why this chiropractic adjustment cured her vision.
I think he was saying it was all in her head, and it didn't. But I don't see...
But she could still see, and the symptoms had never returned.
I think he was saying that there wasn't something physically wrong with her. That was... She didn't have a, like, physical problem that was affecting her eyesight. That was mental.
Interesting.
But I don't buy that personally.
I don't buy that either, because 2 different ophthalmologists diagnosed her with this eye condition, which I guess she didn't have if the chiropractic adjustment fixed it, but...
It also doesn't dismiss the fact that why couldn't it have been a pinched nerve? Like...
Sure.
You're not proving to me that that's...
Right, and that's what I was waiting for him to say, was like, oh, she could have been misdiagnosed with this issue, but he never did.
No, he was basically just saying she's a nut.
Yeah.
He was just being very dismissive. He wasn't saying there's no way a chiropractic adjustment could help your eyesight.
Right.
So, he was not really the most convincing skeptic.
No, not exactly.
All right. That's the case of Edgar Casey. If anybody knows, like, a book I could read about Edgar Casey or something, I'm kind of intrigued.
I'm intrigued, too.
I liked that segment. Okay, let's move on.
All right, this is an unexplained death that takes place in Hollywood, California. And we get Robert Stack on an overpass saying, Hollywood, California.
This is a very Forensic Files type segment.
The Dream Factory. A fantasy land fueled by the tantalizing fable that anyone can be famous overnight.
He looks so out of place wearing a trench coat while standing on this bridge over Hollywood Boulevard. It makes him look like a total creeper. He looks like he's gonna go flash people.
Yeah.
Like, usually he's walking in, like, a church or a courthouse or something, and there's a little bit of fog or dry ice, and you're like, oh, this fits. Like, you've set a mood. We're gonna solve these mysteries. But in this case, I was like, you are the mystery. You're gonna go out and commit crimes.
Kind of seemed that way. All right, so Crystal Lane Spencer was raised in a small Northern California town. At 17, she dropped out of high school and took a job to help support her family. In the summer of 1982, she moved to Los Angeles to chase her Hollywood dream. But she soon realized that stardom was not so easy to come by. Crystal reluctantly took a job as an exotic dancer to pay her bills. She was a topless dancer at this place called the Wild Goose.
She was making $400 a night in 80s money.
Yeah.
Reluctantly? I mean, that sounds like a really good gig.
It did.
I was like, make that money. I realized that's not what she wanted to do, but...
Yeah,
That's a lot of money.
I know. She was doing okay. So, yeah, on a good night, she took home $400 in tips, but she never fully accepted the fact that this is Unsolved Mysteries quote, she never fully accepted the fact that she was basically a stripper.
I mean, she was a stripper,
but they were dancing around it quite a bit.
She didn't, I mean, wasn't her chosen profession.
Right. So according to Crystal's friend, Patty Jo Millhouse, who might be on downers in this episode, I know she talks
She's
so
on something.
slow, and it almost
Allegedly.
looked like she was about to fall asleep at any second.
Maybe she has narcolepsy.
Maybe, you know, that could, Patty
Who
Jo.
are you to judge just because you're so awake?
I don't know what you got going on, Patty Jo, but she said the fact bothered Crystal. Quote, she would just start crying, like she felt degraded about herself of what she'd done.
I wonder how much of that is the stigma.
I think it's just, the internalized misogyny and the stigma
was
of
like,
being a
hey,
stripper.
I got a job as a topless dancer and I'm making $400 a night in the fucking 80s. If people were like, hell yeah, that's awesome, would she have felt bad about it? Or would she have been like, you're right, it's a pretty sweet gig?
I really don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
In May of 1987, friends invited Crystal to a barbecue, which looked like a delightful little backyard barbecue.
Yeah, it's kind of like, invite me. God.
She was
rude.
eager to socialize with people who might help her acting career. It was there that she met Anton Klein. Quote, this is Anton saying, there was something very alluring and compelling about Crystal that would really catch your eye. She knew that she would become not only an actress, but she'd become a very famous actress, and it was only a matter of time.
It seemed like she was very extroverted. She was very, like, positive,
She
maybe.
seemed bubbly. Like, you know, people
Yeah.
are described as bubbly, which is a description
word.
I hate, but it really seemed to apply to her based on the reenactment.
It's a word no one has ever used to describe me in all of time, but it does seem apt for her.
It does. So Anton Klein was an aspiring screenwriter and PhD candidate. He was about a decade older than Crystal, and he and Crystal came from totally different backgrounds, but they soon fell in love.
He seems very, like, serious, and I want to use the phrase a stiff shirt.
That's true. That's a good way of
Like,
describing him.
He just seems, like, very buttoned up. And she's much more, like, lively and outgoing, and he's maybe kind of a nerd.
Yeah, it would be a great romantic comedy if it didn't end in murder.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. We'll see. Okay, so Anton says that he introduced her to art galleries and museums and concerts. Quote, she loved classical music. She loved fine art. She wanted to know more about these other wonderful things of life that she had never been exposed to before.
Oh, what a wonderful man.
I know. Educating, taking this young stripper under his wing.
He really is patting himself on the back about this.
Yeah. So Anton had no idea that Crystal worked as a topless dancer. She walked a fine line discovering... What? Okay, so I'm reading off of Unsolved Mysteries website, and I don't necessarily appreciate this. She walked a fine line discovering art and culture by day and working Hollywood's dark side by night.
They said that in the episode.
Is that what they said in the episode?
Yeah.
Okay, I seem to have blocked that
They
out.
wanted to act like she's living a double life. Like, anyone that works in adult entertainment never goes to a museum. You know what I mean? It's like,
You can't be a respectable
can't believe
woman.
that she went to a classical music concert, but also gets paid in tips. I was like, what? It's almost
She
like,
shows her boobs in the bar.
she has boobs.
So...
I was like, all right. They're trying to make this a little steamy. And then they okay, whoa, the shots of the club are some of my favorite because you have never seen exotic dancers so fucking clothed. Like, you would think, I realize this is network television, you know, it's coming out, you're eating dinner with your grandparents watching this, they're not going to be topless. You would think you could put them in a bathing suit. Crystal's wearing a full-on shirt and shorts and just, like, shimmying around.
And then the guys in the audience are so apathetic. You would think that they were just watching the most boring
Like an
commercial on
infomercial,
TV.
yeah.
They're just blank, just
She's
kind of
just
like blinking up
hey,
at her.
I have a big belt on.
She's just like
and
slowly moving her shoulders, and then
Yeah.
you do get one shot of like her bare legs, and then the shawl falls. But yeah, you're right. It's
there's also like a girl in like pink cowboy boots and like a pink hat, but also she has like a belt on top of. I was like, what kind of striptease is that for?
Yeah.
Oh.
So this is a quote from Crystal's
According to Unsolved
friend.
Mysteries, the bikini has not been invented. That's my point. Like, you can only wear full clothes. Who knows what people wear at a beach, according to this show.
So Patty Jo says that Crystal loved Anton very much, but she was very scared about him finding out that she was an exotic dancer. And Crystal said, well, I better quit dancing then before he finds out.
Which was just sad.
Yeah, so finally, 4 months after they met, Anton says that he found out about Crystal's, quote, other life. He said a neighbor saw her dancing at the club by the airport where she worked, and he said, I saw that girl on stage. I said, no, you couldn't have. He said, that was her. Of course it was her, and I was shocked. So Patty Jo says that Anton was fine with it, but we never actually hear that from Anton, which was what...
That is weird.
I found weird. Like in the show, he's never like, I was okay with it. We just
Or
heard
just
it.
like, I loved
We just heard
her.
Patty Jo slowly tell us that Crystal was fine with it.
was okay with it.
So
You might think he'd be like, nah, maybe that's not what I wanted her to do, but I loved her and I would learn to accept it. Or, like anything, really. But he doesn't address it.
at all,
He just talks about how great he is to, like, take her to some free gallery show.
right.
What a gentleman.
So
I showed her a whole other world of paintings.
So one night, Anton goes to Crystal's house. She's recovering from a cold. She's sniffly, still a little bit
I think
sick.
he brings her some food.
Yeah, and she tells him that she has this job offer. It's kind of unclear, but she's considering going to Japan to become a hostess. Which seems like a logical extension of what she was already doing.
Yeah, it's mostly just like being, like, entertaining men while they're whining and dining.
Yeah.
Like, you're there, you're looking pretty, you compliment them, you chit-chat, stuff like that. It's like a professional ego booster.
Yeah. So she was considering going to Japan to become
Which is
a
apparently,
hostess.
it's apparently great money.
So he goes over there and they talk for a little while. And then he says he will be in touch. And then he left. 3 days later, Anton tried to reach Crystal by phone, but he kept getting a busy signal. The operator told him the receiver was off the hook. Anton said he just assumed that Crystal had left for Japan without saying goodbye. Apparently, Crystal was pretty messy in general and often, like, talked on the phone with people and then forgot to hang up the receiver. And then he went to the Wild Goose to see if she was there, and the doorman told her that she had left for Japan. So that's also why he thought that she had left without saying goodbye. A lot of people are skeptical because it was like, 6 days or something from when he last saw her to when her body was found. And claims that he was trying to get a hold of her, but he never went to her apartment, which a lot of people find suspicious, but who knows?
I mean, if he's not going to be able to get in, what difference does that make?
Right.
Also, I'm kind of wondering if the bouncer is just like, you're some creep.
Possibly.
She's not here. Just go away. You know what I mean?
If she told the bouncer that she was planning on going to Japan, then she just never shows up again. Like, of course that's what he's going to say.
Yeah.
So-
Also, he doesn't really want to, stand around talking to patrons about where their dancers are when they're not there.
Right.
It's kind of none of their business.
So I watched the episode twice because there was a lot in the episode that I was left confused about. So then I listened to the Trail Went Cold podcast.
Oh, okay.
Did an episode about this. And so this is what happened as well. In that week where after Anton left her to when her body was found, she called her sister. I think it was the day before she is thought to have died. She called her sister and told her sister that she wanted her mom's phone number, but her mom had said to her sister to not give that phone number out unless it's an emergency. Crystal tried to tell her sister that it was an emergency and that she was so sick she couldn't make it to the phone. But her sister thought she was just being dramatic and refused to give her mom's phone number. And then her sister goes on to say that, apparently Crystal was often dramatic, and that's why she was she dismissed it. And then the next day is when they think that she probably died, which I feel bad for her sister in retrospect. You have to feel pretty
so guilty
about that. On Friday, the 13th of May, 1988, police discovered Crystal's decomposing body in her apartment. She appeared to have been dead for almost a week. Anton Klein was questioned. He says they at first just said that she was found dead at her apartment and that they wanted to know when I'd last seen her. And I said I last saw her on Wednesday. They wanted to know how she was, and I said that she just had a cold, but that was it. They think that she died of natural causes. So an autopsy revealed no trace of drugs or alcohol in Crystal's system. That's not actually true. She had a small amount of alcohol and marijuana in her system, which I don't know why Unsolved Mysteries didn't want to say that. It wasn't enough to overdose, or like it wasn't enough to get alcohol poisoning or anything like that.
Oh. Well, our opinions towards marijuana have changed a lot in the decades. Maybe they were trying to, I don't know, be respectful.
Yeah, I guess. There was no obvious sign of foul play or suicide. The coroner ruled that her death was the result of an undetermined cause. Deputy District Attorney Robert L. Cohen says the body of Miss Spencer was in such an advanced state of decomposition they were not able to ascribe the cause of death, so they have no finding. Anton could not believe that Crystal had died of natural causes. He said, when I last saw her, she was a young woman with a cold. I was suspicious because of the way I was told the body was found in an obscure corner of her apartment, nude from the waist down, and I learned that neighbors had heard terrible screams coming from her apartment that someone had described as the sound of torture. So yeah, on May 7th, 3 days after Crystal had been homesick, two of her neighbors, Susan Aiken Taylor and Jet Taylor, were...
Susan is gorgeous.
Susan went on to win Miss America?
Really?
Yes, but there's a lot of controversy around Susan. I learned this from the Trail Went Cold podcast. Her grandfather was a noted racist and murderer.
Oh!
Yeah.
Didn't see that. I was just like, wow, what a babe. And you're like, yeah, and that babe's father was a Nazi.
Yeah, Susan is the granddaughter of Bernard L. Aiken, a conspirator in the murders of Cheney Goodman and... James Cheney and Andrew Goodman and Mikey Schwerner. They were murdered in an event that was called the Freedom Summer Murders, also known as the Mississippi Civil Rights Workers Murders
the
Mississippi Burning Murders. They were three activists who were abducted and murdered in Neshoba County, Mississippi in June 1964.
That was her grandfather?
That was her grandfather, and she...
Holy shit!
She went on to denounce this, but she also openly opposed mixed marriages.
Oh my god, what?
The New York press quoted her as saying, quote, I feel at this time intermixing could lead to more problems.
Ew.
So, yes, Unsolved Mysteries interviewed Miss USA at one point, but she seemed kind of gross. I don't know if that was her husband or whatever, but
I didn't see that coming.
The other thing is that they said that they quite literally thought that someone was being tortured. She described the sound as being like someone was being burned over and over again.
Like with a cigarette, yeah.
Yeah, but they decided that they weren't going to get involved and call the police because they thought it was just a domestic disturbance.
Okay, I was wondering if they thought when they first heard it that people were having sex.
So this
and then later they were like, oh, that was probably her getting murdered. But at the time they were just hearing screams and whatever, and they were like, oh, someone's having fun next door, haha. But you're saying no, they definitely knew.
This is the information I got from Robin Warder's podcast, The Trail Went Cold. I don't know where he got this information because I couldn't find a lot when I was Googling it, but he's always very detailed. In his,
So it's a much more professional podcast.
Much more professional than this. He said that they did initially think that it was some BDSM sex going on, but then it escalated, and what they told authorities for why they didn't call the police was because they were told in California you just don't get involved in domestic disputes.
Ew.
So they did, and then also they told the landlord the next day that they should go check it out and make sure that they were okay in that apartment. But the landlord also didn't want to get involved, so they didn't do anything. And then when the body was found, they approached the police and told them about the night they heard the screams. So they definitely thought something was going on. At first, they were like, well, maybe it was just, some kinky sex going on. And then, it's because they literally thought it sounded like someone being tortured. Another neighbor, who I don't know if they're named, thought that they heard the sounds of someone being violently ill and gagging. So it's quite possible that this is
so depressing.
Crystal had a serious medical thing going on, and who knows if they would have called 911, maybe she could have been saved, or maybe she was too far gone. But it sounded like at the very least she was in agony.
See, okay, but if I heard someone being tortured, yes, I would obviously call the police. If I heard someone being violently sick, no. So...
Right, I understand why the other neighbors didn't call the police. But the fact that Susan and...
Well, she seems like one of the worst people on earth, so...
I thought that, someone was being burned with a cigarette over and over.
Oh my god. Poor Crystal.
I know. So her body was discovered a week after her neighbors heard the screams. They finally told the story to the police. Jet Taylor said the police officer seemed disinterested. Crystal's family requested to view the body several times, but the coroner's office continually refused, claiming the body was in no condition to be seen. I think that was probably true. Anton was denied access to the police records. However,
he's not family.
September of 1988, 4 months after Crystal's death, he was able to obtain the autopsy report. Anton is convinced that there was some body snatching going on because the coroner or the medical examiner, I'm not sure which one it was, listed an incorrect height and weight by like a lot. It was like 50 pounds off or something like that. And they said that they scanned her body for metal, but they didn't note that she had pins in her ankle from an injury she received as a child.
Right.
I think the medical examiner may have just been shitty at their job.
Yeah. I think errors is a much more likely scenario than somehow someone else's body is in her apartment and she's gone, or
right. That makes
their body's got, even if their body somehow got switched at the morgue, she's still dead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Anton suspected that Crystal's death may have been related to a former highway patrol officer named Horace McKenna. Rumors circulated that McKenna secretly owned several topless bars, including the one where Crystal worked. So McKenna was a former felon at one point, and there's a law prohibiting felons from owning topless bars in California, or at least there was at the time. So he was like a secret owner in a bunch of these. Okay. Apparently he was very eccentric and had like this sprawling mansion where he had like tigers and shit. Whoa. And some of Crystal's coworkers claim that she would go to parties that he had there, and it's alleged that he would entertain other police officers.
I'll go.
Using women who worked in his topless bars as entertainment for these parties.
Sure.
So it's quite possible that...
Do you think he had peacocks?
Probably.
Do you think he would greet his guests in like a velvet smoking jacket?
Maybe. So he... He seemed like... by all accounts, he wasn't like a good dude. It seems like he was involved in some shady shit, but not... Murder. There's no credible evidence that he murdered anyone. And also, he was murdered himself, like 10 months after Crystal died. Yeah, he was killed in an unrelated incident in 1989. So... That's
wild.
What later came out, I also...
Was it the tigers?
I appreciate... Maybe it was the tigers. No, actually it wasn't. What I will say is that I appreciate Robin Warder's work because I'm poaching off of almost all of it. He was killed by like a contract. It was like a contract killing by his business partner because he wanted to like take over the businesses or something. It was completely unrelated to Crystal's death. There's a suspicion that she was an FBI. This is the weirdest part. The FBI had a whole file on Crystal before she died. And
is it because they're investigating this dude?
The file was released, I think, to Anton, but 21 pages of it was withheld. And so a lot of people are like, why would the FBI have a over 21 page file on this employee in this guy's bar? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so a lot of people speculate that she was informing on him.
Right.
And then that's why
Makes
she
sense.
was maybe she was poisoned or strangled.
This guy doesn't seem like a poisoner. A guy that owns tigers and topless clubs.
Right.
He's poisoning people.
So I don't know. It is a mysterious death. I don't know.
You really brought a lot to this that was not in the Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, good, because I feel like I did a shitty job. Because this recap that I found on the internet, I should have just taken my own notes, but I thought the Unsolved Mysteries website was going to be good.
I realized.
Yes.
Also, how many leopard print rugs do you think was in that mansion?
Oh, at least 5, maybe.
I'm so jealous.
Probably at least 5.
Do you think he had one of those tubs that looks like a big clamshell?
Maybe that was his bed. It was a big clamshell.
So he had style. That's what I'm hearing. I like that I'm fixated on this like low life's mansion. That was like, I really want to know what his like decorating style was. Was it like Scarface?
We can just imagine that it was.
Interesting.
So I do highly recommend you listen to the Trail Went Cold episode on this one because there's a lot more details that I didn't get to. It was a more interesting case than I anticipated based on watching Unsolved Mysteries. Unsolved Mysteries did an okay job, but it left me with a lot of questions. Because what I was reading on Unsolved Wiki and like Googling it and reading the Reddit threads, like a lot of that information wasn't in the show, so I was getting confused. And so finally I just was like, I'm going to listen to this podcast about it and get it straight.
Unsolved Mysteries and trying to create family-friendly fare about murders makes some interesting choices about what information they include versus exclude, and I don't always understand their logic. And I think, though they wanted the steaminess of Crystal being a topless dancer, they also wanted to make sure we felt bad for her. So I feel like we didn't get a full view of everything that was going on.
True. Quite true.
Even though we're not garbage people, and we would have felt bad for her anyway.
Apparently, Anton has like an IMDb page for some like obscure movie he was sort of involved in because his PhD thesis was used as like the basis of a screenplay. So if you're interested in watching his movie, I don't remember what it's called, but it's on YouTube. So...
I'm really not interested.
Nah, me neither.
What I want to do is go to this mansion.
Well, maybe... I'm sure someone owns it.
They've probably redecorated it from now. It just seems to me that I would love the mansion decorated by an 80s felon who owned a bunch of topless clubs. Like, that
is your aesthetic.
It's so stylish, right? It's gotta be. Like Biff's place and Back to the Future 2. If anybody knows what I'm talking about. That top floor of that thing. Anyway, let's move on to mystery number 3. That was very interesting. Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to drink some toasted coconut polar for a second. Catch my breath. Your mystery is so long. This next one is bafflingly long.
I like this one, though.
Okay, well, I'm glad you liked it.
This is a wanted. This is the case of Dennis Depew. He was wanted for, guess what it was? Murder. Also, how much did you love this photo of him that they kept showing?
It was great.
Where he looks like a goddamn zombie. He could not look like, does he have hepatitis and scurvy?
I don't understand. Was part of his face paralyzed?
I'll feel bad if there's actually something wrong with him.
He murdered someone. Don't feel that bad. He literally looks like a zombie.
The bags under his eyes could not be deeper, and his skin looks all jaundiced, and he's standing here by his wife, who looks like, totally normal, and then he's there like, hey, hello, darling.
In the first Men in Black movie where the little alien jumps in that corpse and animates it? This is what that guy's face looks like.
Yes. This is a full-on animated corpse of a human. Okay. So,
also, at one point they showed his face for way too long and slowly zoomed in on it.
Yeah, what was that about?
It made me want to look away.
So this segment opens with a couple going for a van ride, which they apparently every Sunday would take like a nice leisurely drive around the country. Okay, so this is Ray and Marie Thornton are going through their Sunday drive. This is near Coldwater, Michigan. They're on Snow Prairie Road. So they would play this like license plate game as they're driving around while they would like try to make jokes and phrases out of people's license plates. And so this van is driving really quickly and pulls around them. And she goes like, geez, he's in a hurry, because the license plate is the letter G and the letter Z and then numbers, right? So it's like the most wholesome Americana-y thing. So they're whatever. This guy's driving a little bit recklessly. They're not paying that much attention. He speeds away, but they do remember this part of the license plate. At that point, they're passing an abandoned schoolhouse, and Mary notices that there's a guy standing there with a gigantic bloody sheet, and also sees the van, again, like parked between the schoolhouse and like a tank or something. And she's like, okay, like I'm pretty sure I just saw that guy with a gigantic bloody sheet.
The reenactment of them seeing him walking through the woods with this bloody sheet?
Yeah.
that, okay, if you are to this day still scared of unsolved mysteries, I understand why. If you saw that as a child, you would never be able to drive through the country again.
Okay, what's interesting is I assume you've never seen the movie Jeepers Creepers.
You know, I feel like I have, but it's just been a million years.
With Justin Long in it.
Okay, no, I don't think I have.
And it's about like a kind of
I know of the movie,
scarecrow guy.
I think I've never seen it.
So the opening of Jeepers Creepers is probably based on this.
Oh, yikes.
This is like a theory that's out there that if you look at the opening sequence of Jeepers Creepers and this segment of Unsolved Mysteries where they spot this, it's very similar.
Oh.
So Justin Long and whoever the female character is, they're driving, they're playing the license plate plan, a van comes around them, they make a joke, they see something by an abandoned school like this that's very eerie.
Oh, fuck, I didn't know this. I
Yeah.
want to see the YouTube videos that put them side by side.
It exists. I looked at it. It is very similar.
Wow.
Because this would be such a terrifying experience if you're just like out about your day, blah, 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 and then you see this.
Oh, yikes.
So they, get back on they're on the road. They see this. They're wondering like what they should do. At this point, the guy gets back in the van. He like goes around them again. They pull off and like turn and are coming back, and they see him changing the license plates. Because they're trying to, write. They know it starts GZ.
Right.
They're trying to write down the rest of it, so they're following the van. And when they get up to him, he's over by the side of the road changing the license plates, and the passenger door is open and completely covered in blood.
Oh, so fucking scary.
So I can, props. I was gonna say props to the person who saw this and was like, "Whoa, this would be a great opening to a horror movie, even if it's something as stupid as Jeepers Creepers." But Jeepers Creepers was also directed by a known convicted child molester.
Yeah.
Not kidding. So no props to anyone that's vile.
No one gets props except this couple.
Yeah, this couple, because, okay, they see the guy changing the license plates. They see this bloody covered door. This is pre-cell phone time, right? They're out in the middle of the fucking country in the middle of
You don't know
nowhere.
if this lunatic is going to chase you down.
They go back to the schoolyard to find that bloody sheet before he can get rid of it.
They're heroes.
So she's like, we were careful where we would step. This would be me and Samantha, I want to say. This would be us all the way. Which they're like sneaking into the schoolyard. They're trying not to mess up any footprints.
We're getting out our Amazon forensic kits.
So they find this bloody sheet has been like mostly stuffed into this animal hole that was on the ground. And so they're like, okay, like this evidence is here. Like, I don't think they touch it even. They just like confirm
In
that.
the reenactment, he pokes it with the stick, but
Like, all right,
whatever.
it's there. And so then they go home and call the police and can give them all of this information. Well, I mean, what a fucking Sunday to just have this randomly where you're like, that door is completely covered in blood.
This fucking
And
guy murdered someone.
Is changing his license plates by the side of the road right now. Who was that? That was Dennis Depew.
An animated corpse.
And the ugliest man I have ever seen. What happened was that he was going through a divorce from his wife, Marilyn. Dennis was a property assessor, and Marilyn was a high school guidance counselor. The two had been married for several years. They had three children. But what? The marriage didn't work out with this guy. Hard to believe. Hard to believe. So Marilyn leaves him. He is not happy about it, and he regularly accused Marilyn of turning the children against him. So this was in 1989. After 18 years of marriage, Marilyn files for divorce. So she told her attorney that Dennis was trying to ruin her life and would not let her make decisions on her own, blah, blah, blah. Basically, she wanted a divorce, and he didn't, but he was always acting like she was making it worse and dragging it out, but he's the one that didn't want the divorce, so it's just very contentious. And he's granted bi-weekly visitation rights, but the children were often reluctant to see him. Look, this guy's a fucking murderer. I'm guessing he was not a great husband and not a great dad.
Right.
So he is, in the terms of the divorce, is granted access to the guest house for some reason, which he is using as an office. But he also just used that as a way to like always be around and like break back into the main house. And one of her friends says that even after she changed the locks and got new keys and everything, she came home once and he was just like on the couch, basically just to like show her he could. He's just like
gross,
exerting power over her and being a creep. So on Easter Sunday, April 15th, 1990, Dennis arrives to pick up two of his children. One of his daughters, Julie, had already refused to go with him. So he goes and he's talking to his son, Scott, and Scott's like, yeah, can we go in a little bit? He doesn't want to go, right?
Right.
He's enjoying whatever he's doing, and he doesn't want to leave with his dad. So they get into a fight where Marilyn is trying to tell him, like, if he doesn't want to go, like, maybe he doesn't have to. And he becomes so angry that he starts screaming at her and grabs her and pushes her down the stairs in front of their children. This reenactment is hard to watch, by the way.
Yeah. I felt so bad for the kids.
Yeah, because they're witnessing their dad kill their mom.
Yeah.
So he pushes her down the stairs. The children are like screaming for him to stop. One of them runs over to the neighbor's house so she can call the sheriff. He like picks her up from the bottom of the stairs. She's clearly severely injured. And he says, oh, I'm taking her to the hospital. But she's like not communicative at this point. She's probably hit her head or she has severe injuries, right? So she's like not making eye contact with her children. And it's not clear that like they like know that she's not consenting to that, I think. Like
they totally know something is wrong here.
Right. Like he's just dragging her away and going like, I'm going to the hospital. And her children are like, yeah, what was his long-term plan there? I mean, none of this is thought out. I mean,
clearly.
Yeah. So he actually shot her in the back of the head. And because of the information from the two people driving down the road, police were able to like put together, you know, the sequence of events from today. And this segment at this time, Dennis was wanted, which is terrifying.
This corpse man is walking among you.
Right. Like they show the forensic team out getting the tire mark thing from the schoolyard. And that, you know, there's like the bloody sheet and I forget. Oh, okay. Yeah. Her highway workers discovered her body near a deserted road. She had been shot once in the back of the head. And so he goes on the run. And over the, like, next few days, he sends his friends bizarre, rambling letters that are about, like, how Marilyn had it coming and he didn't have any choice and she never should have divorced him and just trying to, like, pass the blame along for some reason, even though he pushed his wife down the stairs and then shot her in the back of the head.
Well, it's clearly her fault.
Yeah, so this aired March 20th, 1991. Okay, so then we get this update that the night that this broadcasts, a woman who they don't name but call Mary gets home. It's 8:30 at night. Unsolved Mysteries is on in her house. Her boyfriend runs up to her and is like, yeah, so my mom is sick and I gotta go. Like, he's
got this shifty eyes. He's looking at the TV, looking at her. She's making these bologna sandwiches.
The crappiest looking sandwich. He's like, can you make me like a lot of sandwiches for the long ride? Women, you need to stop being so accommodating. She knows he's fucking lying. She knows she is never going to see him again. She doesn't know what's going on.
She's still slapping together these shitty bologna
sandwiches. Look, she's probably scared of him, honestly.
That could be true.
I'm sure he seemed very manic. So she's like, dude, you want your sandwiches? I'll make your fucking sandwiches. Get the hell out of here. So she goes, she makes the worst sandwiches you ever saw in your life. He's like frantic, according to the reenactment, like frantically just throwing in like random socks and whatever into a duffel bag.
I appreciated that in the reenactment they have the Unsolved Mysteries segment playing on this tube TV and he's just like throwing shit over his shoulders.
Because apparently he was keeping her in the kitchen so that he could watch the segment about him without her seeing it. Because it's her house, right? Oh my God.
I mean, I guess you're on TV. You're famous.
Maybe he just wants to know what they know.
I suppose that's probably true.
So he takes his shitty sandwiches in his duffel bag and gets in the van. And she's like, I knew I was never going to see him again. And you know what, Mary? You're better off.
Yep.
So I think her friend calls in and gives him the license plate number for Dennis's van. Which is... Maybe Mary didn't like that, but that's a good friend. This led to a high-speed chase where he was led into Mississippi He broke through 2 police barricades, and eventually they shot out his back tires and caused the vehicle to come to a stop. And at that point, Dennis shot himself, committed suicide.
It's too bad that he wasn't, they weren't able to bring him to justice, but maybe he'll get justice from Satan in the next life.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I'm sad he's dead.
Not really.
It's very guilty of this crime. He sent tons of people letters about it. He was seen pushing his wife down the stairs by his own children. Like,
yeah,
could not be more guilty. So I guess he just didn't want to face what he had done, and yeah, that's the dramatic end to that. So this wasn't like because of the broadcast he got caught, except that he's dead.
Right.
But it wasn't. It was a
wild story.
Yeah. And a weird Jeepers Creepers tie-in.
I'm going to go watch those YouTube videos.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Huh.
So, let's rate this.
All right.
Let's sum it all up.
Reenactments.
I feel like they're pretty good.
They were good. Yeah, I thought our Jeepers Creepers reenactment was very scary.
That was actually, I can see how that would inspire a horror movie. That was scary.
The old-timey reenactments were pretty
enjoyable.
good.
Yes, I liked them.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Fashion?
Pretty good.
80s, like, aspiring movie star fashion.
Yes, all
was
the
pretty good.
topless club fashion, though very clothed for that establishment,
was good.
Was amazing. I feel like also the children in my last mystery were all wearing different brightly colored sweaters with geometric designs on them, and I loved all of them.
Oh yeah, we had some tights and tall white socks and scrunchies.
What was my mustache for this one?
I didn't notice any goddamn mustaches in this episode.
Oh, okay. So this was one of Dennis's co-workers named Jan, and he had a mustache. It was brunette, and it looked exactly like this, and I called it the semicircle.
Okay.
It really is just like a half circle of solid mustache. He also had Jeffrey Dahmer glasses. Maybe that'll refresh
solidified the look.
Yeah. He was, yeah. He had a look and he went for it.
I'm a thumbs up for fashion.
Yeah, why not?
Did we say mysteriousness?
I don't think we did. It's not particularly mysterious.
No.
I'm not sure exactly what happened to Crystal. Do you think Crystal died of natural causes, or do you think she was murdered?
It's really hard to say because my gut tells me that it was natural causes. But I'm like, what would take down a young, otherwise healthy woman in that way, where you're like in agony?
Yeah.
Because, we'll never know because her body was cremated and they didn't perform, other than a preliminary, like, cursory toxicology, they didn't do any, like, advanced testing that would reveal if she had any other...
It's disappointing.
Like, substances in her body or she was suffering from any other... they didn't look into it further, so we'll never know if she had some sort of... gastrointestinal issue or something, or maybe she had a perforated bowel. You know what I mean? Like, those things happen,
right?
Like, you can, like, your intestine can get a hole in it or something from something you ate. Like, those things can happen, and probably it would take a little while for you to pass, and it would probably be very painful. So
that could explain the screaming.
I don't think Anton... A lot of people think Anton is suspicious. I think partially that's because of his mannerisms. Like, he comes off kind of pretentious.
I just think Anton's a nerd.
I think so, too. And the other thing is that...
I don't think that's suspicious.
The police were very quick to dismiss this case as natural causes, and they cremated the body. If he had murdered her, why was he going around screaming about how this was a cover-up and her body had been swished and someone murdered her?
He would have been like, oh, it's a horrible tragedy.
She was kidnapped by the Japanese mob. Like, he was out there demanding the FBI hand over documents. Like, I don't think he would have done that if he had murdered her.
Actually, no, I really don't think so.
So I think all of the people on Reddit who think he's suspicious.
I just think he's a tiny bit weird.
I think they're just reacting to that.
Which does not make you a murderer.
No.
And it seems like he really loved her.
Yeah, it did.
Because he could have, I don't know, he could have not cared, right?
Right.
He could have just moved on.
I don't think they were together that long. Like,
yeah.
He could have easily moved on, but he made it this crusade to figure out what happened to her. So I don't think he murdered her.
No.
And then the only suspicious thing that I find is the documents that the FBI had on her. Like, maybe she was informing on that guy and he did have her killed. I don't know, but...
Yeah, but then how?
It also seems like the simplest explanation is that she had some horrible illness and then it was just unfortunate that no one cared to look into it more.
Yeah. I would
But-
agree.
So it's I mean, in that way, it's kind of mysterious.
Yeah,
It's kind of a mysterious episode. I'm like a hesitant thumbs up.
sure. I would go along with that.
How do you feel about Robert Stack?
I think he looked like a total creeper by the Hollywood Boulevard.
Robert Stack had a little bit of a flasher aesthetic going on.
Yeah, the trench has never looked worse. So I'm gonna give it a thumbs down.
Yeah, I
he
think
made
I'm
it
with ya.
seem it was just seemed seedy.
I think I'm with you on that one.
Usually it's just like you're like, I'm going to the store to buy a trench coat right now. I'm sold on the idea. And this time I was like, oof, it's not raining. Why are
Nah.
you wearing that? Put it away, Stack. Where's your jean jacket?
Yeah, or your windbreaker ensemble.
Where's your all khaki outfit for the safari that is Hollywood Boulevard? I also loved that Crystal's ashes were sprinkled on under the Hollywood sign.
Yeah, that was really sweet.
That's just so Lana Del Rey.
I loved it.
I just, that's glamour.
Yes.
I love that. So, R.I.P. Crystal.
How do you rate this episode?
I think I liked it more than you did.
That's probably true. I think I'm like at a 3.
I would say 3.5.
Okay.
Approaching 4.
Yeah, it was decent.
I liked it. I think, I mean, I love 4 mysteries, and this is only 3. But I think these actually are pretty solid.
The last one was more satisfying than I think I gave it credit for.
You were probably just so disgusted by his zombie face that
Well, that'll haunt me for the rest of my
we
days.
do get a lot of details on this case that I'm not entirely
It's just
sure
so long.
sure why, but I'm glad he didn't exactly get caught, but he pretty much got caught, and I'm glad.
At least he didn't spend 20 years on the run, like
Yes.
hobnobbing around Europe like some of these assholes.
It was very discouraging.
So, I mean, at least that didn't happen.
I'm glad his children and wife don't have to worry about him.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would recommend watching this one.
What else would you recommend?
Why? I thought you'd never ask, Samantha. I do have a recommendation. Samantha's like eyeing it. I have a book recommendation. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you might know that I sometimes am like, oh, John Waters says this or John Waters says that.
Sometimes. Try like every other episode.
And then you're like, Liz, you don't know John Waters. How do you know that? Well, lucky for you, I have a book recommendation. It's called Shock Value, a tasteful book about bad taste by John Waters. And that's where all that stuff's coming from that I'm always saying. This is just a collection of essays by him. And I couldn't recommend it more.
Okay.
Just for inspiration and like life philosophy. It talks about making his movies and stuff. That's not what honestly, I don't really care about his movies. Whatever. That's not the person behind that is what I'm interested in. If you want just advice on how life should be lived or how to think about things,
This is the book for you.
this is the book for you. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a great recommendation.
And that's why I keep being like, oh, well, John Waters tells us, blah, 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 blah. It's because I read it in a shock value.
It's nice to have those little nuggets of knowledge that like in your pocket you could just pull out at appropriate times. Be like,
Yeah.
well,
I don't recommend every book by him. I've read a few. I definitely don't recommend possibly his most recent one, which is about him like hitchhiking across the U.S. now.
well, that's not safe, John Waters.
Well, it's also just like such a cash grab for a book deal, like nothing
Sure.
I've ever seen.
Sure.
He's not enjoying it. He really just wants to get it over with.
Okay, well,
So clearly he was like, hey, I'll write a book about hitchhiking. And someone gave him a big check. And then he was like, oh, God, I don't want to do this. I'm an old man now. But if you want to hear about like him and Divine shoplifting whole chainsaws and all other sorts of wild stuff and like his childhood and just him being like a really weird kid and
this does appeal to me.
yeah,
It sounds
and
good.
having like totally normal parents who are just like, where did you come from? Like, what are we gonna do with you? You're so strange. It's really amusing. Yeah, there's a few stories like that are just like hilarious. He like overhears his parents at some point like talking about him. And they're just like, he's just an odd duck. Like they're like, what are we gonna do with John? It's I don't even remember which movie, but one of them has some reference to like a foot fetish in it.
Okay.
And after the movie, his parents like go to the screening, right? It's like total like normal. These normies go and they see this movie, and there's this reference to like foot fetishism. And after the movie, his mom is crying, and it says they're gonna put you in an asylum. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, that's not a thing. You just made that up. Like, she thought he was going to be institutionalized.
Because he made up foot fetish?
He like invented foot fetishes. Yes.
Oh.
Just stuff like that. And the introduction for this book is by Simon Dewan, who's also very wise. Someone that you should listen to. The world's only famous window dresser. He's Jonathan Adler's husband. He's had a really weird, interesting life. I've read a few of his books too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this. Maybe if I ever stop reading books about diseases, I'll...
you can, well, you're welcome to borrow this one.
Well, I have 2 more in the queue. So the one I just started is 20 hours long, so...
I wanted to see what some of these, like... The first chapter is called The Filthiest People Alive. The second one is called Why I Love Violence. And the third one is called The Hillbilly Ripoffs. Oh, also, yeah, John Waters was like a true crime aficionado before anyone was. He's a trailblazer in that.
Ahead of his time.
Everybody thought he was a total gruesome weirdo. He used to
now look at us.
Yeah, exactly. He used to just go to trials, like when he had spare time. He would just go and sit in on trials, and everybody thought it was, disgusting.
Right.
And now we're all like, ooh.
Now there's a new true crime documentary every week.
Yeah, yeah. He used to host some true crime show. I can't remember which one. That it was about, like, matrimony murders or something.
Okay.
It was all, like, married couples, I think.
Interesting.
Called, like, Till Death Do Us Part.
Oh, of course.
And he would, like, introduce each segment and, like, the tech. Oh. He's just a trailblazer in terms of taste and how to handle criticism and being yourself and just being a weirdo.
Nice.
What's your recommendation for us?
So I feel like my recommendation is going to be super short, but
That's fine.
This is a Twitter account that I really enjoy. So
okay, that's important.
Twitter is not always a fun place to be. I feel like I need some...
It's a strange place.
It's a very strange place. It can be hard on your mental health sometimes. I understand if you just need to take a break from Twitter. The other thing I think you can do is you can infuse your Twitter with some things that bring happiness and joy. One of the ones for me is this Twitter account that I think is very underrated. It's called Never Heard of It. It's at NVR Heard of It. And if you're familiar with a slightly more popular Twitter account called like Bad Amazon Reviews.
Oh, yeah.
That's the same guy who does this. And this is just screenshots of people saying they've never heard of very famous things.
I love it already. Like what?
Okay, so here I'm going to scroll through. What? There's a Captain Marvel movie? Never heard of it. Let's see. I didn't screen these before. Who the fuck is Steven Spielberg? I've heard of Kirk Cameron. Who the fuck are you? Let's see. What's some more?
Oh my
Jay-Z, never heard of her. Who the fuck are Kurt Cobain?
Wow.
Who the fuck is John Wayne?
Also, people know there's Google, right?
I guess.
Like, if you haven't heard of something, it's easier than ever to look that up. You don't have to live with that ignorance. The best Amazon review I've ever seen, and I think about this a lot, is I was looking at some book, and someone had rated it 1 star and said, I haven't had the chance to read it.
That's just someone who doesn't understand how reviews work.
Clearly they got an email from Amazon saying, like, please review this item you ordered, and they felt like they had to do it. So they were just like, I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to read it. 1 star.
That's funny. Yeah.
I love when people talk to Facebook pages for big brands as if it's like their specific local one.
Yeah.
Like people will like message Chili's and be like, is my grandson Kevin there? And they'll be like, ma'am, this is not like the Chili's by your house, you know? Oh, so darling.
So yeah, this is just, they haven't been around very long, so there's not like a huge catalog of tweets, but I hope they keep it up. This Joe guy, I hope he keeps it up because it's very amusing every time I see a tweet come through my feed. I also like the Bad Amazon Review I would also recommend that because some of them are just hilarious.
Speaking of, you should give us a great iTunes Apple Podcast review.
Yeah, as long as it's 5 stars.
We only
say whatever
accept-
the fuck you want.
We only accept 5-star reviews. Keep that in mind. That is a rule enforced by Steve Jobs himself. You are only allowed to give us
This podcast.
5 stars.
Yep.
Yes. Is that all we have for today?
I think it is.
All right, then. So I just mentioned those reviews you'll be writing. Let's see. What else do we need to let you know? We're on the social medias. Twitter, Facebook. We have a Facebook group. We're on Instagram. Perhaps it's you.
Yeah, perhaps it's you. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/perhaps it's you. Throw us just even $1. Gets you some cool shit. Like
You can listen to all these episodes now.
like
and
episodes
coming
about
soon, chicken people.
and bar rescue and kitchen nightmares. Things that have a lot to do with unsolved mysteries.
Yeah, I made Samantha watch Dexter once. It makes sense.
I mean, that sort of has something to do with unsolved mysteries.
Does it?
At least it's murder.
At least people died. You should send us an email about your paranormal stories because we are
We'll
going
need
to be
a few
doing
more weeks, people.
We're going to be doing our listener stories soon at the end of the season. So that's perhaps it's you podcast@gmail.com, or there's a form on our website, perhapsitsyou.com. And that might be it. And we're so glad that you listened.
You're the best.
And we hope you dream of Robert Stack.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.